Formula 1 tyre blankets cost £22,000 per car for an F1 weekend. However, they are packed with incredible technology that enables drivers to be quick straight out of the pits. So, how do these tyre blankets work and what makes them cost so much? Why do you need them? Well, it's all about the rubber in the tyre compound. If you push too hard before the tyres are within the right temperature window, the surface of the tyre is too cold and brittle to generate grip. So if you push on tyres that aren't generating grip, you wear the surface rapidly and you can cause graining, which then reduces the amount of rubber in contact with the track and ultimately the grip available to the driver. So teams and drivers are very careful about how they bring their tyres up to temperature. Now, while I've driven cars on Pirelli slicks that do need tyre warmers, I also spent most of my racing career going out on cold tyres and bringing them up to temperature myself. And as long as you drive in the right way to warm them up gradually and quite carefully, it will only take a lap or two. And you generally use a few techniques. Firstly, you have to load the tyre up in the corners and along the straights. F1 cars have a lot of downforce, so you can put a lot of load through the tyres to warm it up in the tread and through the sidewall. You'll see drivers weaving, and this is so you can keep that cornering load going through the tyre even when you're on a straight. But what actually happens is when you increase the downforce, when you increase the load going through the tyres, it squashes the sidewall, and a lot of heat is generated from this process. Another great way to get heat into the tyres quickly is to brake hard, then accelerate hard, and then brake hard. So as long as you don't lock up and damage the tyres, this transfers a lot of heat through the entire width of the tread, getting the tyres up to temperature even more quickly. And the last one, which is one that you do need to be careful with, is to slide the front tyres across the circuit. The rear tyres of the car are actually quite easy to heat up, as you can do that with a lot of power and some wheel spin, but the fronts are a little bit trickier, so we generally slide them across the track to get them a little bit warmer. But you want to be careful not to do this too much because you could start graining. But all of this tyre warming does take time. Of course, you can do it on a warm-up lap or before a qualifying lap, but not directly in a race. So a way back, F1 teams realised that you could have the tyres close to operating temperature before they even got on the car. This all started at a couple of cold races in the 1970s, where at tracks like Canada, the drivers could really struggle to get the tyres up to the working temperature. So the teams began using small areas in the pits that they could use to heat the tyres and keep them warm. But they then had an issue where they would cool right down by the time the tyres were on the car. So they began taking the tyres out of the heat, wrapping them in blankets, and then fitting them to the car with the blankets on, only removing the blankets when the car went out on track. In the 1980s, Mike Drury saw this at a Grand Prix at Brands Hatch and thought he could revolutionise things. He worked in the waterproof jacket industry and thought he could execute on his creative idea. So he basically created a 240-volt heated blanket shaped to fit a tyre.
His tyres will be warm, but his coffee will be cold.
And it changed the game, with the team still using them to this day. Where you can get a heated blanket for your bed for about £30, these things cost way more. Now, you might be surprised to know that the old style of warming tyres, in what is essentially a hot room, still happens in sports cars racing today. They call them tyre ovens, and they're custom-made heat-proof tents that fit a set of tyres in. The teams then put a diesel or electric heater in the bottom, warming the wheels and tyres up to the desired temperature. But why do they not use tyre blankets? Well, they are expensive, and also they don't fit very well on cars with wheel arches, like in the World Endurance Championship. So they are banned, meaning all of the teams use these ovens. But they do have an advantage over blankets. They can also heat the wheel rim. This means you can get a more even, consistent temperature through the tyre and the wheel, which also helps performance. Now, aside from the cost to buy these things, there are other costs involved as well. The main one being powering them, because heating a wheel and a tyre up to 70 degrees Celsius consumes a lot of energy. Then multiply that by all 80 tyres the teams could have heating per car, and the energy bill gets rather large. A while back, the teams would have all 20 or so sets of tyres heated and ready to go. Now there are rules to limit this. So teams are only allowed to heat the tyres that they are going to use in the upcoming session. And so everyone isn't heating inters and hards for a dry qualifying session. They're now also only allowed to heat slicks up to 70 degrees Celsius for up to 2 hours. and the inters are only 60 degrees Celsius, and the wets aren't even allowed to be heated. And of course, we must mention that F1 are looking to ban tyre warmers entirely on the grounds of reducing energy usage. But the race pointed out it could take 2 laps to get the tyres up to temperature, and if you work out that cost, including development, tyres, fuel, everything, it's around $20,000 per lap. So it's a little bit more complicated than that. F1 also stated it would make the first laps out of the pits more challenging, and that could create better racing. That would likely remove the undercut strategy altogether, not to mention the cost for the Turn 1 incidents, like we've seen in the WEC. Martin Brundle pointed out it would also stop drivers trying the change to slick strategy that is so exciting in races with changeable conditions, because the tyres just wouldn't heat up. Whereas Max Verstappen got straight to the point and said this: "It would not make the racing better. I think anyway, on an outlap when you're struggling so much in a car, just to warm the tyres, it would look so stupid." And also said, "I don't think it actually consumes a lot of energy, these tyre blankets. I think an AC consumes more when you combine it through the whole paddock." So the proposed ban has not been that popular with the drivers and teams. By the way, would you like the chance to drive a real-life F1 car? Well, we're running another competition with the chance to drive Kimi Raikkonen's F1 car from 2012. This is an all-expenses paid trip from anywhere in the world to France to come and hang out with me at the Circuit Paul Ricard and drive the F1 car. We'll cover the flights, the accommodation, all your meals and the car hire. Everything is included, and you get to come and drive an F1 car for the day at the circuit. This is really a once-in-a-lifetime trip, so if you'd like to enter, just click the link in the description below, and hopefully I'll see you at the track. So what do these tyre blankets cost? MA Horn charges £2,200 for a set of blankets, which doesn't seem ridiculous, but the teams have upwards of 20 sets across the garage. And that's not all. That doesn't include the cost of the control unit, which all of the teams will have across all of the tyres plugged in, even in the paddock, the garage, and even when they're on the car. The teams actually have ports in the panel above the car in the garage, so the tyres are still heated when they're on the car just before a session. Now, £2,200 might not seem that expensive in the whole scheme of Formula 1, but it is a lot more expensive than a £30 heated blanket. But there is a reason for this cost. Tyre blankets are, of course, way more complex than a heated blanket, which essentially puts a current through a metal of consistent resistance to create heat. And the price is down to the complexity of these tyre blankets. They have similar heating elements to an electric blanket, but of a much higher standard that can heat very quickly and very precisely. These elements are embedded in a heat-conducting gel to apply really even heat to the tyre. And even the drawstrings that are used to hold the blankets on the tyre are made from Kevlar to stop them burning. Then there are sensors all over the blanket as well, and these form part of the control loop for the system. So they check the temperature, allowing the system to make sure it's delivering the right amount of heat at the desired rate. Because the teams don't want to heat these tyres too quickly, otherwise the tread gets too hot, but the core of the tyre is too cold. So the teams take about 90 minutes to about 2 hours to heat a tyre properly. This means that the blankets have to heat up from cold to the desired temperature at a very specific rate. Then they also have a pressure sensor too, so they can make sure the pressure is correct as the tyre warms up. As when the temperature increases, the pressure does too. So the complexity of these tyre blankets, the limited runs that they produce, energy costs and the costs of materials all mean these tyre blankets are expensive. A bit like F1 wheel nuts, which cost an insane amount. Just check that video out here. Thanks very much for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one.